Senator Dick Durbin delivers a sharp critique of Attorney General Pam Bondi, accusing her of weaponizing the Department of Justice to protect President Trump and his allies while undermining career officials. He highlights purges, ethical lapses, and dropped investigations, framing these actions as a direct threat to the integrity of America's top law enforcement agency.
Thanks, Chairman Grassley, for holding this oversight hearing. Welcome, Attorney General Bondi. I'm glad that we are following this committee's long-standing tradition of regular oversight hearings with the Attorney General, the Director of the FBI, and the Secretary of Homeland Security. These hearings have never been more important as President Trump turns the full force of the federal government on Chicago and other American cities. The assault on the city I am proud to represent is just one example of how President Trump and Attorney General Bondi shut down justice at the Department of Justice even before the president's party, controlling the White House, Senate, and House of Representatives, shut down the government. The Attorney General has systematically weaponized our nation's leading law enforcement agency to protect President Trump and his allies and attack his opponents and, sadly, the American people. You have purged hundreds of senior career officials since you first appeared before us. These men and women had dedicated their careers to protecting the American people. As a result, the department has lost literally thousands of years of law enforcement expertise. To be specific, you disbanded the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force and the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team, despite the growing threat of foreign election interference and the drastic rise in cryptocurrency crimes. You forced out almost 75% of the Civil Rights Division's career attorneys, while hate crimes are on the rise. You fired more than 100 immigration judges, while the immigration case backlog is more than 3 million. You cut the public integrity section from 30 prosecutors to 2, while political corruption skyrockets. During your confirmation hearing, I asked you about your many potential conflicts of interest as a former lobbyist. You responded under oath, quote, "You will consult with career ethics officials within the department and make the appropriate decision," end of quote. But the Justice Department then removed those career ethics officials and put in their place inexperienced political appointees beholden to President and you. And you've effectively shut down the Office of Professional Responsibility, which investigates misconduct by Department of Justice attorneys. Now, with these ethical guardrails out of the way, corruption has run rampant at the Department of Justice. Although you've been a registered foreign agent for Qatar, you did not recuse yourself from signing off on President Trump's solicitation of a free jet from the royal family, even though this gift was clearly illegal. Connections to Attorney General Bondi seem to yield more favorable outcomes for defendants. At least 2 long-running federal prosecutions were abruptly dropped after the defendants hired your brother. It's no surprise that Ed Martin, the failed U.S. attorney nominee you appointed as senior official, said, quote, "No MAGA left behind." Our nation's top law enforcement agency has become a shield for the president and his political allies when they engage in misconduct. Last year, President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, was allegedly recorded accepting a $50,000 bag of cash in exchange for promising immigration enforcement-related contracts. Under your leadership, the investigation into Mr. Homan was dropped. After President Trump pardoned nearly 1,600 January 6 insurrectionists, including more than 600 charged with assaulting or impeding law enforcement, the Department of Justice is arguing in court that these pardons provide immunity for wholly unrelated crimes in multiple cases. Jared Weiss was filmed on January 6th, encouraging his fellow rioters to attack the Metropolitan Police Department officers. And he said, "F them, kill them." What happened to Mr. Weiss? He's been hired by you as a senior advisor.
Senator Durbin is laying out a stark critique of Attorney General Pam Bondi's tenure, emphasizing that the Department of Justice has been weaponized to protect political allies and undermine the rule of law. He begins by highlighting the extensive purges of senior career officials, noting that hundreds of experienced professionals have been removed, resulting in the loss of thousands of years of institutional expertise. Durbin stresses that this loss is not abstract. It directly impacts the DOJ's ability to enforce the law effectively, particularly in areas of election security, civil rights, immigration, public integrity, and cryptocurrency crimes. He points to the disbanding of the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force and the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team, along with the near elimination of the Civil Rights Division's career attorneys, as examples of how critical capabilities have been diminished, even as the threats they address have grown. He also emphasizes that the DOJ has become increasingly politicized, arguing that personnel decisions and prosecutorial outcomes are being guided by loyalty to President Trump rather than legal merit. Durbin cites the firing of over 100 immigration judges, the slashing of the public integrity section from 30 prosecutors to only 2, and the abrupt termination of almost 75% of civil rights attorneys while hate crimes rise. These examples, he asserts, demonstrate a systematic prioritization of political interests over public safety and justice. Durbin points to the erosion of ethical safeguards within the DOJ, noting that career ethics officials were removed and replaced with inexperienced political appointees loyal to the president and Bondi. The effective shutdown of the Office of Professional Responsibility, which investigates attorney misconduct, is presented as further evidence that accountability has been undermined. He argues that these structural changes remove critical checks on the Attorney General's power, allowing corruption and favoritism to flourish unchecked. The senator specifically calls out Bondi's involvement in decisions with clear conflicts of interest, including her approval of President Trump's acceptance of a free jet from the Qatari royal family, despite her prior foreign lobbying work. He frames this as a violation of ethical norms and an example of how the DOJ has been used to shield political allies from scrutiny. Durbin also highlights instances where prosecutions were dropped after defendants retained Bondi's family members, suggesting that preferential treatment is being applied at the highest levels of the department. Durbin raises the example of Tom Holman, a former Trump administration official allegedly caught accepting a $50,000 bribe, to illustrate DOJ inaction on politically sensitive cases. He also references the pardons of more than 1,600 January 6th insurrectionists and the subsequent DOJ arguments that these pardons provide immunity for unrelated crimes, suggesting that the department is prioritizing political loyalty over justice. Durbin highlights Jared Weiss, an insurrectionist filmed encouraging violence against law enforcement, who was later hired as a senior advisor, as evidence of a broader pattern of rewarding political allies rather than holding wrongdoers accountable. Throughout, Durbin frames these actions as not merely individual missteps, but systemic failures, with broad consequences for public trust, law enforcement capacity, and the impartiality of justice. He underscores that the purge of experienced officials and the elimination of ethical oversight structures have created an environment where loyalty to political figures supersedes adherence to the law, leaving the Department of Justice ill-equipped to address the nation's most pressing legal and security challenges. Finally, Durbin stresses that these changes undermine public confidence in the DOJ as an institution. By detailing how resources have been misallocated, ethical safeguards removed, and prosecutions selectively enforced or dropped, he argues that the department has transformed from a neutral enforcer of law into a shield for political allies. His questioning communicates a warning that the consequences of such politicization are far-reaching, threatening the rule of law, accountability, and the protection of ordinary Americans.